שלום לכולם. המושב הזה הוא מושב יחיד ומיוחד במינו, כי זה המושב שבו אנחנו נפרדים מפרופסור אילנה סילבר שיוצאת לגמלאות. אני רוצה להגיד רק כמה מילים ואחר כך ידברו תלמידים של אילנה, בסוף אילנה תגיב, ואחרי זה יש עוד כמה חברות וחברי סגל שרוצים להגיד כמה מילים קטנות. אילנה הצטרפה למחלקה לסוציולוגיה ולאנתרופולוגיה ב-1998, זאת אומרת שאת בדיוק מסיימת 20 שנה, זה נראה זמן מושלם. אחרי הרבה מאוד שנים של הוראה, של מחקר, של כתיבה ושל פרסום. במהלך השנים האלה, מהפרספקטיבה של חברת מחלקה, היא כיהנה בהרבה מאוד תפקידים, ואני אציין לפחות שניים. במשך 5 שנים היא הייתה ראש הוועדה לתואר שלישי, נראה לי שזה תפקיד שאהבת במיוחד, נכון? ובמשך 2 היא הייתה ראש המחלקה בין 2004 ל-2006. לא כולם פה היו חברי מחלקה אז רק המעט שזוכרים יודעים שהיא עשתה כמה מהלכים מאוד אמיצים בשנים האלה, וכולנו אסירות ואסירי תודה לה עד היום על המהלכים האלה שאני לא ארחיב עליהם. כמרצה וכחוקרת אילנה נודעה גם כמנחה מבוקשת במיוחד, ובמהלך השנים האלה הדריכה מעל 12 דוקטורנטים ודוקטורנטיות, כאלה שנשמע היום וכאלה שאני רואה בקהל כמעט את כולם, ותודה שהגעתם. חלקם סיימו בהצטיינות, חלקם מלמדים גם היום במוסדות אקדמיים שונים, וכולם ציינו שוב ושוב במהלך השנים את ההנחיה היסודית והמאוד מסורה שלה. מעל הפעילות המחלקתית שלה, מעל המעגל הפנימי שלנו, פרופסור אילנה סילבר רכשה שם עולמי בתחומי המחקר שלה, סוציולוגיה של המתנה, הנתינה והפילנתרופיה, תיאוריות סוציולוגיות שהיא גם לימדה כל השנים, סוציולוגיה תרבותית וסוציולוגיה היסטורית והשוואתית. בתחומים האלה היא פרסמה בכתבי עת יוקרתיים, שימשה כחברת מערכת של 3 או 4 כתבי עת, ביקרה כעמיתה אורחת באוניברסיטת הרווארד, בפרינסטון, בייל, עמיתה של המרכז לסוציולוגיה תרבותית בייל ועכשיו גם בבר-אילן, עמיתת מחקר במרכז לנדיבות גלובלית ושותפה לתנועה האנטי-תועלתנית במדעי החברה. על התכנים של העבודה שלה אני ארחיב פחות, אבל אנחנו נשמע היום דרך ההרצאות השונות ואולי גם בתגובות של אילנה עצמה. אילנה, אני מאחלת לך הצלחה והנאה בחיים החדשים שלך, אבל את תחסרי לנו מאוד, למען האמת מאוד מאוד, אני חושבת שאני מדברת בשם כולנו, ואני רוצה לסיים עם מילה אישית קטנה. בשנים שאני הייתי ראשת מחלקה, אני הייתי מתייעצת איתך מדי פעם, לא כל שבוע, אבל כל חודש-חודשיים היינו מדברות, תמיד לא רק השארת אותי עם הניסיון והתבונה שלך, אלא גם נתת לי איזה ביטחון עצמי בדרך שבחרתי לעבוד בה, וזה מאוד מאוד עזר לי כל פעם. אני מודה לך, ובאופן אישי אני אתגעגע לשיחות האלה. תודה רבה. הדוברת הראשונה שלנו זאת מישל שיר-וייס, בוגרת המחלקה שכתבה את הדוקטורט אצל אילנה סילבר, וכיום חוקרת עצמאית בתחומים של פנאי, תקשורת, מגדר וצריכה. בימים אלה ממש מתפרסם ספרה Time, Freedom and the Self, The Cultural Construction of Free Time בפלגרב מקמילן. וואו, הם חוגגים פה היום פלגרב מקמילן.
אני כבר מתעצלת, אני הולכת לדבר באנגלית. אז א' זה נראה לי פשוט טבעי, כי כל התקשורת ביני ולאילנה תמיד היה באנגלית. ואפשר גם להאשים את תאיר, היא אמרה שזה בסדר. So, okay, I'm going to speak English. Hope you understand my Australian accent. Thank you for the invitation to present here today at the opening of this very important centre, and for the opportunity to say a few words to Ilana, to Professor Ilana Silver. Besides being a brilliant scholar in her own right, Ilana is a teacher. I first met her when she was my lecturer in cultural theories, which I believe instilled in me my love of culture. Later, as supervisor during my PhD studies, I got to know her as a kind, patient teacher, open-minded and accepting. When we would meet, she always listened attentively before voicing her insightful comments. Yet she did so without forcing her views upon me, encouraging independence at all times. Her thoroughness in theoretical matters contributed much to my way of thinking, promoting constant re-evaluation of my work. Admittedly, that part wasn't always fun. Ilana, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your pleasant demeanour and your guidance. I wish you the best in your future endeavours. Now to today's presentation. It was around about the time of the Chagim when Tair sent an email asking for the title for today's lecture. I'd been thinking about the significance of the festivals and rituals and how certain dates in the calendar make order in our time. I noticed that whether one is religious or not, most of us seem to prepare for the Chagim. Can be shopping for clothes, buying things for the house, organising who you're going to be with, and buying food, of course, and lots of it. Many complain about the great effort involved, while others consider it the highlight of their year, either spiritually or simply as a time to bond with the family, making it well worth the preparations beforehand. Okay, זה לא עובר. איך אנחנו עושים? יש פה איזה... אוקיי. Okay, this got me thinking about the way we order our time and about the universal nature of holidays, whether Rosh Hashanah, Christmas or Eid al-Fitr, each with its own rituals. We seem to have a need to escape the profane of everyday life through those sacred days. And considering the title of today's conference, what better way to talk about Durkheim and cultural sociology than to discuss the sacred and profane in contemporary life? The Hebrew title of my paper, as you see, המבדיל בין קודש לחול, is taken from the Havdalah, the ceremony conducted after the Shabbat, which literally separates between the sacred and the profane, the holy Shabbat day from the banalities of everyday material life. The Havdalah, as the word suggests, makes a definite distinction between the two. This is precisely what I'll be talking about today, the differentiation between the sacred and the profane, as I focus on free time in everyday life. Some of you who are familiar with my work know that my research examines free time. When I say free time, I mean time that's free from commitments, including work, family, and domestic duties. That allows us to be free to spend time as we wish, whether to simply relax, pursue hobbies, or go out. In other words, choice and freedom are central to my definition. My PhD research and my forthcoming book are about the cultural construction of free time, relating to questions concerning freedom and the self. Based on interviews with middle-class women and men, I explore how ordinary people spend, experience, and evaluate free time, what motivates them, and how culture shapes the way we think and talk about that time. But today, based on my observations in the field and ongoing work in progress, I'd like to take it to a more theoretical approach. And as I said, Ilana taught me everything I know about theory. And Durkheim will help me do just that. By using his distinction between the sacred and the profane, I shall look at how we evaluate our free time. Why do we rank some activities higher than others? In this context, I'd like to offer the term the hierarchization of free time. I use this concept to analyze how individuals assess and classify free time practices according to their perceived worth. Ask yourselves, what do you consider positive free time? Going to have a coffee with your partner? Just having time to yourself to sit and relax? Or going to the gym? Is it simply a matter of personal preference? Or is our assessment of free time culturally constructed? I'd like to begin with a little anecdote. When I met my friend's 13-year-old daughter one evening, she was telling me how exhausted she was. I asked her, "Why are you so tired?" To which she replied, "I had a sports lesson at school, and then I went to my personal trainer, and then I went to have my nails done." She explained to me that her and her mum had gel, and that's why it took such a long time. Okay, so I learned something. So I asked her, what's tiring about that? Isn't having a manicure supposed to be relaxing? Well, what can we learn from this little story? It made me wonder about how we evaluate free time. Do we have different ideas of what's worthy? What do we consider the pastimes that are more valuable than others? What shapes the way we perceive what we do and evaluate various free time activities. There's no doubt that certain pastimes are more highly valued than others. For example, do we value watching TV the same as we do reading? Why are people quite happy to talk about their reading habits, but a little bit embarrassed to talk about their TV watching habits? We tend to hierarchize subconsciously. As Alexander suggests, it's the task of cultural sociology to uncover the unconscious cultural structures that shape our subjective feelings and perceptions. I would like to explore those shared notions of worth through the sacred and profane. While Durkheim's distinction was utilized to examine religious life, differentiating between the religious and the secular, I would like to apply it to the context of time, since both religion and time are culturally constructed, and our approach to free time often takes on religious characteristics. Durkheim sees religion as a system of beliefs and practices. He maintains that it's the basis of our categories of understanding. So the question is this: is the way we perceive and spend our time also based on shared beliefs, or do we each have our own ideas of what's desirable in free time? My central claim today is that the hierarchization of free time is determined by our shared beliefs of what is sacred and profane. In other words, these categories shape our ideas of valuable free time, making us rank some activities higher than the other. Durkheim's distinction between the sacred and profane related primarily to what he called primitive religion, yet he recognized that it could be applied to the modern world. When referring to the French Revolution, as it's been mentioned today, he suggests that the secular ideas are also transformed into sacred things. But it's not enough to simply suggest a dichotomy between the sacred and the profane as shaping the hierarchization of free time. I could just easily offer a distinction between good and bad, worthy and unworthy. My claim is that Durkheim's distinction between the sacred and the profane and properties such as effervescence, transcendence, can be applied to the evaluation of free time practices and will help us better understand why some activities are perceived as more valuable than others. So let's take a look at how Durkheim defines the sacred and the profane. Firstly, he describes them as two separate worlds. He explains that the sacred cannot be mixed with the profane, and as soon as they come close to each other, they no longer remain what they are. He says, since the condition of belonging fully to one is fully to have left the other, man is exhorted to retire completely from the profane. Indeed, findings from my research suggest that the most valued free time activities are those that are pure and uncontaminated by committed time. For example, free time with the family is ranked high since it's separate from the profane being the routine of everyday life. Only then was it conceived as quality time. Vacations too are highly valued and desired since they serve as an escape from the ordinary. There's something about vacations that allows us to fully leave the profane of everyday life, the result being a sense of transcendence. But even the private domain becomes a sanctum when devoted to rituals such as Friday night dinners, birthdays and anniversaries, all regarded as sacred. Whereas sacred time is pure and meaningful, profane time is contaminated by obligations and experienced as mundane. The sacred allows escape from the real world. The profane means being constrained to material life. Work, says Durkheim, puts us in contact with ordinary things. Free time, on the other hand, is extraordinary. Time with friends, and this is what made Danny's book so interesting for me, is valorized as a desirable way to spend free time. As with free time, the social aspect generates a state of effervescence that Durkheim indicates as the property of the sacred. The emotional energy, as Collins, who's also been mentioned quite a bit today, as Collins calls it, results from the co-presence, the shared emotional mood, and the common focus of attention. For Durkheim, the social is of utmost importance. The sacred serves the interests of the group, as opposed to the profane, which he says is related to individual concerns. Sacred rituals help maintain social identity. And here is where I would like to add a different perspective to Durkheim's notion of the sacred. I suggest that in contemporary life, the sacred is not only collective, but also individualistic. Rather than being considered profane, the individual is treated as holy. Individualism, like a religion, is seen as sacred, which may account for the high rank of self-oriented activities on the hierarchy of free time. In other words, the sacred is not associated only with social solidarity. On the contrary, free time devoted to the self is highly valued, whether directed towards the body, the mind, or the soul. The body is like a temple. It demands total devotion. Even the language we use reflects this sacred quality. How often do we hear people use expressions like chatati when they break their diets, or asur li zeh, asur li zeh? The sacred, says Durkheim, is protected by prohibitions, and one must not deviate from prescribed conduct. An additional characteristic of the sacred is sacrifice, which, as Durkheim points out, requires time and strength, and I will add to that money. Practices such as sport involve effort, but since the body is sacred, the sacrifice just adds to the sanctity. As one participant said about her sports routine, I need to feel like I did something hard, so it makes you feel that you've worked really hard. Having guests also requires time and effort, and as I have said, the chagim involve much preparation and hard work before, during, and after. Perhaps it's precisely the act of sacrifice that contributes to the sense of sacredness. But I have found that rituals of self-indulgence are highly valued, just as highly valued as collective practices. Though these may not involve physical effort like sports, such activities often require time and money. For instance, spas that pamper the body. They become sacred and are thus seen as sanctifying relationships. Indeed, many of my participants indicated spa days as a ritual for celebrating anniversaries or birthdays or any other special occasion. On these special occasions, as in religious ceremonies, the order, the objects, and the place all add to the quality of sanctity. As I've already suggested, reading is also ranked high on the hierarchy of free time. Perhaps part of its appeal is the total devotion to the self. You can't iron while reading as you can while watching TV. Reading is a solitary activity which is completely separate. Even if you read in the company of others, you enter into another world, as one participant put it. This echoes what Durkheim says about sacred rites. They make men forget the real world so as to transport them into another. Furthermore, reading is conceived as intellectually enriching, so that it's perceived as a form of investment in the self. Autotelic activities are ranked particularly high on the hierarchy of free time, and this includes what Stebbins classifies as serious leisure, such as painting or playing a musical instrument. Like reading, these activities require full immersion, that is, complete separation from the profane. Such activities are characterized by what Csikszentmihalyi terms flow, a state of engagement and enjoyment that one experiences when deeply involved in an activity, often creative or requiring skills to overcome challenges. The energetic focus on the activity means the individual can lose track of time. Part of the sacred experience is transcendence. Durkheim talks of the game quality of rites that take people away from the everyday and refresh them with the labour of life, from the labour of life. Spending quiet time alone, especially in nature, is also seen as desirable. Here again, the purity in the sacred, untainted by the profane, may explain the positive valence of escaping fragmented, constrained, ordinary life. Undoubtedly, nature adds to this sense of holiness, just as in the primitive religions described by Durkheim. So now that we've seen how Durkheim's distinctions between the sacred and profane can help us understand the hierarchization of free time, the question is, what shapes those notions? Jack Goody criticizes Durkheim's treatment of religion, saying that Durkheim relates primarily to the ceremonial, placing greater emphasis on rituals than on beliefs. While Durkheim does indicate myths and narratives as central in defining what's sacred and profane, in his discussion of religious life, less attention is given to those cultural forces at work. Although this is not the focus of today's presentation, I'd like to touch on some of the myths and narratives of contemporary life that may shape our understanding of the sacred and profane and thus hierarchize our free time. Firstly, as I have said, individualism is like a religion, with precepts of its own, such as freedom, choice, and autonomy. Consequently, this colours what is considered sacred in free time. As we saw, self-oriented practices reach a level of sanctity, as the individual is free from external constraints and free to pursue activities devoted to the self or involving others. It's the quality of choice that enhances the sanctity of the time. Yet, collective values so deeply embedded in Israeli society shape our notions of family as sacred. However, family time must be separate from the profane in order to be ranked high on the hierarchy of free time. In the same way, social time with friends is sacred only when not associated with work or other commitments. Another central narrative in contemporary life is rooted in the discourse of capitalism. The notion of productivity and hard work as a means of attaining goals are basic principles. Therefore, free time that is utilised to invest in the family or in the self takes on a sacred quality, whereas idleness is profane, productivity is sacred. Consumer culture, too, prescribes certain behaviours as sacred. Investing money into a ritual may be seen as enhancing the sanctity of a practice. For example, a romantic gesture may be more highly valued the more money you spend on it. Objects and places are important elements in these rituals. Consumer culture promotes the consumption of both goods and services that add to the value of an activity. Both self-management practices and hedonistic activities are ranked high on the hierarchy of free time, above the profane of everyday life. Lastly, the therapeutic ethos tells a narrative of control over one's destiny, the notion that one can achieve happiness through time by managing and investing in the self. Free time is thus more highly valued when it's used to work on or indulge in the self. Having time for oneself is sacred, particularly when it's pure time, uncontaminated by the profane. So, it seems that modern myths and narratives, as in the past, continue to shape our notions of what is sacred in contrast to the profane. And as Alexander says, we need myths if we are to transcend the banality of material life. We often spend our time without stopping to think about why we do what we do or why we consider some activities to be more worthwhile than others. Alexander points out that cultural structures are not only external to actors, but internal to them. They are meaningful. These meanings are structured and socially produced, even if they are invisible. We must learn how to make them visible. So I hope I've managed to do so today, for that is the task of cultural sociology. Thank you.